Good evening. Hag Sameach. How's everybody doing? It's almost Shabbos. This is a special Shabbos coming up where we read from 3 Torah scrolls because it's Shabbos, because it's Hanukkah, and it's Rosh Chodesh Teves. So much going on. Let's light up the darkness with our new wisdom candle. All right. Hopefully everybody got the word. I announced it yesterday. We're starting late because we had to celebrate a family birthday on a Zoom call. I went right into that Zoom call from my previous Zoom call, the first gathering of our team. I'm the coach, as I mentioned before, of the USA Golf Masters team going to the Maccabiah Games next summer. And from this class, I'm going to go inside. We're having guests over tonight for a little Hanukkah party. So I just feel like, woo, so much is going on. But I'm so glad to be spending this time with you, my holy sisters and brothers, because it's a key DAF. It's a really special DAF. Tainus 20, the 10th volume of the Talmud. We're in chapter 3. There's only one Mishna in this chapter. And tonight's DAF has beautiful, beautiful, famous stories in it. 2 of them from the Talmud. We'll be getting into that momentarily. Gwen in Michigan, Belle in Florida, Bill in Missouri, and I'm glad you're here. Melissa in Great Neck, New York, Randy in Florida, Nancy, North Carolina, John in Maine, James in Indianapolis, Stephen in New Hampshire, skipped on me, Virginia in Encinitas. We were just recently in Encinitas, and you have a kosher donut shop in Encinitas. A wonderful surprise there. Randy says Hanukkah Sameach. Shandora in the Bronx. Paula in Chicago. Over there on the YouTube side, Christo in Lubbock, who says, I reference this DAF all the time. Just so. Tamiro Shalom from Ethiopia. How awesome that you're tuning in from Africa. Welcome. Aoife in Florida. Samantha says, please pray for me. May you have a refuah shlema, a complete healing. And we say, Amen. And Samantha is in Tacoma, Washington. Tonight's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by our very own Bill Eldridge, who has a really beautiful dedication. Bill says, in honor of all the theologians and friends who work for greater friendship and harmony in Christian and Jewish relations, I am taking $30.90 out of my monthly tithes to give to AT. Bill set up a recurring donation. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Bill. You're such an important part of our class. May you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. Thank you so much for helping us reach more people with more Torah and adding, such a beautiful perspective every night here in our class. May you be blessed in all your ways, Bill. And we say Amen. Let's get into it. It's such a rich DAF. We have company coming in an hour, and I was like, well, I got to make a, speedy page. I'm going to move as efficiently as I can, but we're doing the whole DAF. I mean, this is just one of those pages where we really cannot leave anything out. So we're going to be moving fast, but I promise you will enjoy this page. Okay, so we're talking about here in chapter 3 of Tractate Tainus. Generally, the 10th volume of the Talmud is about public fasts and public fast days that the sages would decree in ancient Israel in response to drought and other calamities. We also had that distinction between drought and famine. Very timely, as we're talking about the famine in Egypt during this week's Torah portion. But Bill, it was very good distinction you made. Drought is when there's no rain. Famine is when people are starving. And those are different things. Famine can be caused by drought, but it can be caused by other things as well. And that's a distinction that our sages made as well. All right. We pick it up at the bottom of 19b. The sages taught once all the Jewish people ascended for the pilgrimage festival to Jerusalem, and there was not enough water for them to drink. Right? So they're coming in the summer, probably, Shavuos, maybe Sukkot. And Nakdimon Ben Gurion, one of the wealthy citizens of Jerusalem, went to a certain hegemon, right, a certain Gentile officer, I suppose, of Rome, and said to him, lend me 12 wells of water for the pilgrims, and I will give back to you 12 wells of water. And if I do not give them to you, I will give you 12 talents of silver. And the officer set him a time limit for returning the water. So first, let's just note how beautiful this is. This is a true philanthropist, right? He sees all the Jewish people coming up to Jerusalem for a pilgrimage festival and his concern that they won't have enough water to drink, and he takes it upon himself to provide water for everybody. He takes on as a personal debt to a Roman soldier that there should be water for the pilgrims, and if not, he will pay for it himself. When the set time arrived and no rain had fallen to refill the wells that Nakdimon would need to repay the Roman officer, in the morning that day, the due date of the loan, as it were, in the morning, the Roman official sent a message to Nakdimon. I think it's a Roman officer. Maybe it's a Greek officer. It just doesn't say. And hegemon sounds, Bill will let us know, but it sounds Greek. Okay, so maybe it's Greek. So send me either the water or the coins that you owe me. And Nakdimon sent a message to him. I still have time, as the entire day is mine. Right? He needs like a downpour to come on this day after, there's been a drought for months. That's why there wasn't enough water for the pilgrims. And he needs a downpour to come and fill 12 wells of water so that he can repay the soldier. So he says, I still have time. The entire day is mine. At noontime, the official again sent a message to him. Send me either the water or the coins that you owe me. And Nakdimon sent a message to him. I still have time left in the day. And in the afternoon, he sent a message to him. Send me either the water or the coins that you owe me. And Nakdimon sent a message to him. I still have time left in the day. The officer ridiculed him, saying, throughout the entire year, rain has not fallen. Now we're at the top of 28. And now it will rain. He entered the bathhouse in a state of joy, the soldier did, anticipating the large sum of money he was about to receive. As the master entered the bathhouse in his joy, Nakdimon entered the temple in a state of sadness. And he wrapped himself in his prayer shawl, and he stood in prayer. And he said before God, Master of the universe, it is revealed and known before you that I did not act for my own honor, nor did I act for the honor of my father's house. Rather, I acted for your honor, so that there should be water for the festival pilgrims. Immediately, the sky became overcast and rain fell until 12 cisterns were filled with water, and there was even more water so that they overflowed. As the master left the bathhouse, Nakdimon ben Gurion left the temple. When they met one another, Nakdimon said to him, give me the money you owe me for the extra water that you received. I was only supposed to repay you 12 wells of water. You've got an overflow. Now you owe me money. Chutzpahdik is this Nakdimon. The official said to him, I know that the Holy One, blessed be He, has shaken His world and caused rain to fall only for you. However, I still maintain a claim against you, by which I can legally take coins from you, as you did not pay me on the agreed date, for the sun had already set, and therefore the rain fell onto my property. Nakdimon went back and entered the temple, wrapped himself in his prayer shawl, and he stood in prayer. And he said before God, Master of the universe, let it be known that you have beloved ones in your world. Immediately, clouds scattered and the sun shone through. And at that time, the master said to him, if the sun had not broken through the clouds, I would have had a claim against you by which I could have taken my coins for you. And a sage taught Nakdimon was not his real name. Rather, his name was Buni. And why was he called Nakdimon? Because the sun broke through, Nikdera, for him. Right? Everyone thought it was already night. And then God said, no, you've mistaken. It is still daytime. Here is the sun breaking through the clouds. And Nakdimon was made whole. And the sages taught, with regard to three people, the sun broke through and shone at an irregular time for their sake. Who are they? Moses, Joshua, and Nakdimon Ben Gurion. And the Gemara asks, well, granted, in the case of Nakdimon Ben Gurion is known by the aforementioned tradition, and the case of Joshua too is derived from a verse, as it is written in Joshua 10:13, and the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies, the famous incident. However, from where do we derive that the sun shone in a supernatural way for Moses? And Rabbi Elazar said, it is derived by verbal analogy between I will begin and I will begin. Here, with regard to Moses, it is written, Deuteronomy 2:25, this day I will begin to put the dread of you and the fear of you upon the peoples that are under all the whole heaven. And there, with regard to Joshua, it is written, on this day I will begin to magnify you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know. So I will be with you. That's Joshua 3:7. And the repeated use of this phrase, I will begin, indicates that all the miracles performed for Joshua were also performed for Moses. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said, the fact that the sun stood still for Moses is derived by a different verbal analogy between the terms put and put. Here, with regard to Moses, it is written, I will begin to put the dread of you. That's there. With regard to Joshua, it is written, then Joshua spoke to the Lord on the day when the Lord put the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still upon Gibeon, and you, moon, in the valley of Aijalon. Right? Aijalon. Joshua 10:12. And Rabbi Yochanan said, this idea is derived from the verse itself, as it says with regard to Moses, this day I will begin to put the dread of you and fear of you upon the peoples that are under all the whole heaven, who, when they hear the report of you, shall tremble and be in anguish due to you. And when did the nations of the world tremble? And when were they in anguish due to you? When the sun broke through for Moses. And then a note from Rav Steinsaltz, the sun stood for Moses. In addition to the allusions mentioned in the Gemara, the sages elsewhere add that the phrase, upon the peoples that are under all the whole heaven, indicates that this was not merely a local victory, but an event that affected the entire world. Much as when the Torah was given at Sinai, there were reverberations of that throughout the whole world. The whole world knew that something incredible had happened on that day. New subject, and the Mishna taught, and likewise, if there is a particular city, so now we're going back to the Mishna and describing calamities that could trigger the leadership to proclaim a fast day. And I'll mention at this point that I did check with Rabbi Mechi Blau here in LA, and he teaches the DAF Yomi Shir that I participated in when I was doing DAF Yomi for the first time. Great teacher and such a great man. And so I asked Rabbi Blau about this because I wasn't familiar, as I mentioned, with these kinds of fast days being declared in modern times. We've had the question a couple times. So my answer was basically right. They don't declare fast days in modern times like this, with all the stringencies and taking the Torah out into the plaza and blowing the shofar, sounding the alarm, etc. From time to time, there have been fasts declared, usually not an all-day fast, and usually in response to, like, when some great gadol, some great Rosh Yeshiva, like a major Torah scholar in the people of Israel around the world, health is threatened, that kind of thing. There can sort of be almost like an uprising among the other Gedolim, among the other big rabbis of our generation, calling for a fast, and it can happen. Super, super rare, not really like the fasts that are mentioned here. And there's somebody else, Yossi, explained to me in Armenian, really the reason it can't happen is because in those days, when the temple stood, there was the Sanhedrin. After the temple was destroyed for some time, there was still a Sanhedrin in Israel that could make this kind of a declaration. Even though we're talking about sometimes these are local communities, as we keep describing, nevertheless, for there to be the authority to declare this kind of a fast, we just don't have it anymore. We don't have central authority, in Judaism. We don't have a central authority like that. We have sort of the recognized great Torah leaders of the generation who might come together and agree on something. But the kind of fast days we're talking about here in this tractate, doesn't happen now. It was in ancient times. We have kind of an offshoot of that with a kind of minor or half fast, very occasionally being declared. And there's the possibility of individuals declaring a fast upon themselves when they would recite the Anenu within the Amidah. Let's continue. So the Mishnah taught, and likewise, if there is a particular city upon which it did not rain, while the surrounding area in Israel did receive rain, this is considered a divine curse, as it is written, and I will cause it to rain on one city, but on one city I will not cause it to rain. One portion will be rained upon, and the portion upon which it did not rain shall wither. That's from Amos 4:7. And Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, and both of the cities are faced with a curse, as one city suffers from drought, while the other is afflicted with destructive storms. This statement reverses the plain meaning of the verse, and the Gemara provides other interpretations that Rav Yehuda attributed to Rav, which also run contrary to the simple meaning of a particular verse. Example, Jerusalem among them was like a nida, a woman having her menses. That's Echa, Lamentations 1:17. And Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, although the simple meaning of this verse is that it's a curse, like Jerusalem has been rendered so impure, it can also be understood as a blessing. Jerusalem was like a nida, just as a nida will become permitted to her husband after the conclusion of her days of ritual impurity and then going through mikvah purification. So too, Jerusalem will be repaired from its destruction. And similarly, with regard to the verse, how she has become like a widow. At Lamentations 1:1, Rav Yehuda said this too is for a blessing. And the verse states that Jerusalem is like a widow, but is not an actual widow. Rather, Jerusalem is like a woman whose husband has gone to a country overseas. Without her husband by her side, she is likened to a widow, and yet he intends to return to her. Right? So this idea that Israel, the people of Israel, the nation of Israel, are the wife and God is the husband, and we become estranged because of our misbehavior, but we will be reunited when Mashiach comes. In the same manner of explanation is provided for the verse, therefore I have also made you contemptible and base, Malachi 2:9. And Rav Yehuda said this too can be interpreted as a blessing, as meaning that the nations view us as lowly, but nevertheless they do not assign us unpleasant jobs. They do not appoint from us either river officials or government officials. The prophet Ahijah the Shilonite cursed Israel in the following terms, 1 Kings 14:15, for the Lord will smite Israel as a reed is shaken in the water. And Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, this too is for a blessing. As Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yochanan said, what is the meaning of that which is written? Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Proverbs 27:6. The curse which Ahijah the Shilonite cursed the Jewish people is more effective than the blessing with which Bilam, the wicked prophet, blessed them. And Rabbi Yochanan elaborates, Ahijah the Shilonite cursed the Jewish people by comparing them to a reed. For the Lord will smite Israel as a reed is shaken in the water. Now, although it seems to be a curse, this verse is actually a blessing. For just as this reed stands in a place of water, and its shoots replenish themselves when cut, and its roots are numerous for a plant of its size, and even if all the winds in the world come and blow against it, they cannot move it from its place. Rather, it sways with them until the winds subside, and the reed still stands in its place. the same applies to the Jewish people. After all the difficulties that they endure, they will ultimately survive and return home. However, Bilam, recall the story when the wicked king Balak tried to entice the prophet Bilam to come and curse the Jewish people, the children of Israel, in the wilderness. And Bilam said, I can only curse whom God would have me curse. I can only bless whom God would have me bless. And he ends up blessing the Jewish people. Although, as we see, he did that because he had communication from God, but he was reluctant. He reluctantly blessed the Jewish people. And then he sort of gave the enemies of the Jewish people a different path to harm the Jewish people. Rather than try to curse them through a prophet or attack them with military, they had the Midianite women seduce the young men of Israel to go and pursue after those idolatrous gods. And in that, they were much more effective, sadly. However, Bilam the wicked blessed the Jews by comparing them to a cedar tree, as it is stated, as cedars beside the waters. Numbers 24:6. Now that was a blessing, reluctant, but a blessing. Now, just as the cedar does not stand in a place of water, and its shoots do not replenish themselves, and its roots are not numerous, Bilam wished that the same should apply to the Jewish people. And furthermore, while it is true that even if all the winds in the world blow against it, they will not move it from its place, once the southern wind blows against it, it uproots the cedar and turns it on its face. And not only that, but the reed merited that a quill, kulmos, is taken from it with which to write a Torah scroll, and the books of the prophets, and the books of the writings. Evidently, the curse comparing Israel to a reed is better than the blessing comparing Israel to a cedar tree. And the sages further taught in praise of the reed, a person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar. And an incident occurred. This is a very, very famous Talmudic story right here. An incident occurred in which Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, came from Migdal Gedor, from his rabbi's house, and he was riding on a donkey and strolling on the bank of the river. And he was very happy, and his head was swollen with pride because he had learned much Torah. And he happened upon an exceedingly ugly person who said to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi." But Rabbi Elazar did not return his greeting. Instead, Rabbi Elazar said to him, "Reka, worthless person, how ugly is that man? Are all the people of your city as ugly as you?" Now, before we continue, Rabbi Elazar was going to be brought low in this story. Don't worry. But Rabbi Elazar was a great, great sage and a mensch, right? How could he possibly say something so rude, so humiliating and heartless to somebody who had just said greetings to him? Now, we do have some interpretations of this story that say that this person who was talking to Rabbi Elazar, it's not just that he was physically ugly, it's that his manner was ugly. And his tone of speech and voice sounded like he was being very sarcastic when he was talking to the rabbi, and Elazar felt like this man was making fun of him. Perhaps. Let's continue. So Rabbi Elazar said to him, "Worthless person, how ugly is that man? Are all the people of your city as ugly as you?" The man said to him, to Rabbi Elazar, "I do not know. But you should go and say to the Uman, to the craftsman," meaning our creator, "go say to the craftsman who made me, what an ugly vessel you made." When Rabbi Elazar realized that he had sinned and insulted this man merely on account of his appearance, right? When the man spoke, Rabbi Elazar realized that no, he wasn't being sarcastic. He might have had a brusque manner, but he wasn't making fun of him. And he answered quite right, You're calling me ugly? Why don't you go tell God who made me that God created an ugly vessel? And Elazar was instantly taken aback, realized that he committed a grievous sin. And now Rabbi Elazar attempts to make teshuvah, tries to atone for his sin. When Rabbi Elazar realized that he had sinned and insulted this man merely on account of his appearance, he descended from his donkey and prostrated himself before him. And he said to the man, I have sinned against you. Forgive me. And the man said to him, I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and say, how ugly is the vessel you made? And by the way, there's a humorous thing in the Torah world, because the word for craftsman used here is Uman, and he says, go to the craftsman. So it says, go to Uman. So, the breast lovers and all the people who like to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah will say, well, it says in the Talmud, go to Uman. But it's a little bit out of context. At any rate, he says to Rabbi Elazar, you go to the craftsman who made me and tell him how ugly is this vessel you made. So Elazar walked behind the man, trying to appease him, until they reached Rabbi Elazar's city. And the people of his city came out to greet him, saying to him, greetings to you, my rabbi, my master, my master. Right? Rabbi Elazar was a beloved rabbi who had tremendous respect among the people of this city. So the man who had been insulted said to the people of the city, who are you calling my rabbi, my rabbi? And they said to him, to this man who is walking behind you. He said to them, if this man is a rabbi, may there not be many like him among the Jewish people. And they asked him, for what reason do you say this? He said to them, well, he did such and such to me. He related this to the encounter. And they said to him, well, even so, forgive him, as he is a great Torah scholar. The man said to them, for your sakes I forgive him, provided that he accepts upon himself not to become accustomed to behave like this. Very proper lesson. Immediately, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, entered the study hall and taught, a person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar. As one who is proud, like a cedar that grows so tall, is likely to sin. And therefore, due to its gentle qualities, the reed, the lowly reed, merited that a quill is taken from it to write with it a Torah scroll and tefillin and mezuzah. Right? We don't use some kind of a splinter from the mighty cedar tree to write a Torah scroll or tefillin or a mezuzah. We use the lowly reed. It's the same lesson we learn. Why is Torah likened to water? Because it descends to the lowest level, and only someone who is humble will merit to learn much Torah and to retain his Torah. New subject. The Mishna taught, and likewise, if a city is afflicted by pestilence or collapsing buildings, that city fasts and sounds the alarm, and all of its surrounding areas fast, but they do not sound the alarm. And Rabbi Akiva says the surrounding cities sound the alarm, but they do not fast. And the sages taught these collapsing buildings to which the sages referred are those of sturdy and not dilapidated walls. They have walls that are not ready to fall and not those that are ready to fall. And the Gemara expresses puzzlement with regard to the wording of this baraisa. What are sound walls and what are walls that are not ready to fall? What are dilapidated walls and what are those that are ready to fall? The elements in each pair of walls described in this baraisa are apparently the same. And so that makes the baraisa repetitive. Why is it saying these things twice? And the Gemara answers, no. It is necessary to specify that in the case of walls that fell due to their height, in other words, they are sound walls, they're not dilapidated, but nevertheless they are ready to fall due to their excessive height. In other words, poor design. They're not old and dilapidated, they were just built wrong, right? So that's a different reason. Alternatively, the baraisa is referring to a case where the walls were positioned on a riverbank as they are likely to fall despite the fact that they are not dilapidated, as the riverbank itself is unstable. Either the walls were poorly designed, or let's say they were poorly designed for their location, right? So that's a different problem than being old and dilapidated. And the Gemara relates, this is like that dilapidated wall that was in Nehardea, Babylonian Jewish community, under which Rav and Shmuel would not pass, although it stood in place for 13 years. And one day Rav Adda bar Ahava happened to come there and walk with them. And as they passed the wall, Shmuel and Rav said, "Come, master, let us circumvent this wall so that we do not stand beneath it." And Rav said to him, "Yeah, it is not necessary to do so today, as Rav Adda bar Ahava is with us, whose merit is great, and therefore I am not afraid of its collapse." Excuse me. And the Gemara relates another incident. Rav Huna had a certain quantity of wine in a certain dilapidated house, and he wanted to move it, but he was afraid that the building would collapse upon his entry. And he brought Rav Adda bar Ahava to the ramshackle house, and he dragged out a discussion with him concerning a matter of halacha, Jewish law, until they had removed all the wine. And as soon as they exited, the building collapsed. Rav Adda bar Ahava realized what had happened, and he became angry, right? So, I mean, it's funny, right? Rav Huna knows that Rav Adda bar Ahava, somehow his merit is so great that it's like he carries with him a kind of aura of protection, and this dilapidated wall won't collapse on him. Rav Huna doesn't have that same merit, so he brought him with him, saying, "Okay, let's just talk Torah while I'm bringing these barrels out of this dilapidated house. I want to save them so I don't have this big financial loss. I'm afraid the house will collapse while I'm in there, but if we're in there together, the house won't collapse because of your merit." And then Rav Adda bar Ahava was angry about that. Why? And the Gemara explains, Rav Adda bar Ahava holds in accordance with this statement, as Rabbi Yanai said. And now here we have another very famous statement from the Talmud. Here's the home address at Tainus 20b. A person should never stand in a place of danger and say, "A miracle will be performed for me, and I will escape unharmed," lest a miracle is not performed for him. And if you say that a miracle will be performed for him, even if somehow you can count on the miracle, it's still not good. Why? Because they will deduct it from his merits. That's why Rav Adda bar Ahava was angry. And Rav Hanan said, what is the verse that alludes to this idea? As it is written, Genesis 32:11, "I have become small from all the mercies and all the truth that you have showed your servant." This is Jacob, right, talking about as he's returning from Lavan back to the Holy Land. And he says, "I have become small." What does he mean by that? He means that like God did him too many favors. God looked out for him too much, and somehow that reduces his merit in this world. And this is why we say we believe in miracles, we do not rely on miracles. And generally speaking, we don't put ourselves in a place of danger where we might need a miracle and use up our precious store of life-saving miracles that each of us might have. We avoid danger. Sometimes it's unavoidable, and then God willing, we'll have enough merit to have that miraculous salvation. But we don't allow ourselves to need a miracle by putting ourselves in a place of danger. Very important teaching, and it's right here. After recounting stories that reflect Rav Adda bar Ahava's great merit, the Gemara asks, what were the exceptional deeds of Rav Adda bar Ahava that he merited to have these miracles performed for him? And the Gemara reports that they are, as it is stated, the students of Rabbi Zera asked him, and some say that the students of Rav Adda bar Ahava himself asked him, "To what do you attribute your longevity? Why did you reach such a ripe old age and I guess go through many dangerous times and survive?" And he said to them, "In all my days, I did not become angry with my household, and I never walked before someone greater than myself. Rather, I always gave him the honor of walking before me." What are the two qualities that will get you tremendous merit in heaven? The humility to defer to others that are greater than yourself, and if you're not sure, just assume they're greater than you. and refraining from becoming angry at the members of your household. How good and practical and difficult is this teaching? Rav Adda bar Ahava continued, and I did not think about matters of Torah in filthy alleyways, and I did not walk 4 cubits without engaging in Torah and without donning tefillin, and I would not fall asleep in the study hall, neither a deep sleep nor a brief nap, and I would not rejoice in the mishap of my colleague, and I would not call my colleague by his nickname, and some say that he said, I would not call my colleague by his derogatory family name. You can see that this man was a saint. Engaged in Torah study all the time, never napping when he's supposed to be studying Torah. Back then, they wore their tefillin all the time, except on Shabbos and holidays. He never went anywhere without it, but he would always cease learning Torah if he was, around filth of any kind. And then this beautiful teaching, he wouldn't call people by their nickname. Because you can't be sure that a nickname is something that people are happy with. Maybe other people started calling them that nickname and they don't really like it and embarrasses them. So he was always, had an air of formality with people, treating them with tremendous respect. And you really see that in the Hasidic world, particularly in the Chabad world. They're very careful of always, saying Mr. Litvak, or Reb Sal, like always adding a title when they speak to you. It's a really beautiful thing. If we would just all increase the respectfulness of our speech to other people, it would for sure be a better world. New subject. The Gemara relates another story about the righteous deeds of the sages involving a dilapidated wall. Rava said to Rafram bar Papa, let the master tell us some of those fine deeds that Rav Huna performed. And he said to him, I do not remember what he did in his youth, but the deeds of his old age I remember. Now this is the same Rav Huna who earlier was relying on the merit of Rav Adda bar Ahava, right? So they could get the wine out of the house. And he must have learned a lot from Rav Adda, right? And then as he grew older, he became such a saintly type of sage. And now later sages still are recounting Rav Huna's deeds. So in his old age, I remember. On every cloudy day, they would take him out in a golden carriage, and he would survey the entire city. And he would command that every unstable wall be torn down, lest it fall in the rain and hurt someone. Right? So in his old age, it's like he's in a wheelchair, right? And he's being carried around by his attendants. What is his interest? Public safety. That there shouldn't be any dilapidated wall that might fall on a person. He's personally going out there and inspecting all the walls of the city for that purpose. And if its owner was able to build another, Rav Huna would instruct him to rebuild it. And if he was unable to rebuild it, Rav Huna would build it himself with his own money. I'm almost done, so if you've got questions or comments, get them in now. And Rafram bar Papa further relates, and every Erev Shabbos, every Friday, in the afternoon, Rav Huna would send a messenger to the marketplace, and he would purchase all the vegetables that were left with the gardeners who sold their crops, and he would throw them into the river. And the Gemara asks, but why did he throw out the vegetables? Let him give them to the poor. And the Gemara answers, if he did this, the poor would sometimes rely on the fact that Rav Huna would hand out vegetables, and they would not come to purchase any, and this would ruin the gardener's livelihood. Right, so he just made sure that the gardeners could afford, he was like subsidizing the farmers, as it were. And the Gemara further asks, and let him throw those, excess vegetables that he purchased to subsidize the gardeners, let him throw those vegetables to the animals. And the Gemara answers, he holds that human food may not be fed to animals, as this is a display of contempt for the food. Right? If he's so sensitive to something that could display contempt for food, think how sensitive Rav Huna must have been toward any action or word that could display contempt toward people. But the Gemara objects. But if Rav Huna could not use them in any way, he shouldn't purchase the vegetables at all. And the Gemara answers, if nothing is done, you would have been found to have caused a stumbling block for them in the future, if the vegetable sellers see that some of their produce is left unsold, the next week they will not bring enough for Shabbos. Therefore, Rav Huna made sure that the vegetables were all bought so that the sellers would continue to bring them, so that there would be a thriving Shabbos marketplace where people could get what they need for Shabbos. Another custom of Rav Huna was that when he had a new medicine, he would fill a water jug with the medicine and hang it from the doorpost of his house, saying, "All who need, let him come and take from this new medicine," right? The vaccine was free, as it were. All who need, come and take. And there are those who say he had a remedy against the demon Shivta, that he knew by tradition that one must wash his hands for protection against this evil spirit. And to this end, he would place a water jug and hang it by the door, saying, "Anyone who needs, let him come to the house and wash his hands so that he will not be in danger." Such were the deeds of Rav Huna. And that completes our DAF today. Wasn't this a tremendous, tremendous DAF? So beautiful. Page 20 here in Tractate Tainus. I only have a little bit of time for questions. So hopefully Nina has set them up for me. And then I'm going to have to go because we have company coming in a little while. Bill, good to know I've got a solid brand. Smiley face. Yes. What just happened? Oh my God. What happened? It just... my Word document just vanished with the comments. Let me just go back over to Facebook and see if I can find that comment. Meanwhile, I see Sharon, was a fast called when Rebbe Menachem Schneerson was critically ill? I don't know. Like I said, this is, rare, but that would seem to have been the kind of time that it could have happened, but I don't know. Sharon also, but the Psalm for Shabbos states, "The righteous are like a date palm tree, like the cedar of Lebanon," and this seems contrary to the teaching given here about the cedar tree. Very good, right? So it's definitely meant as a blessing. It's just that we can find this other aspect to it. And I think it actually relates very nicely to this story about Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar was gloried for being such a great and upstanding Torah scholar, but it went to his head, right? So it's great to be a Torah scholar that's like a tall, proud cedar tree, but you can't let all that learning and stature go to your head, lest you be brought low by the incident in which he had that encounter with the man. And finally, Stephen, I can hear the sages say, but there the cedars of Lebanon are known to withstand strong winds and rain, while here the cedars of Israel are known to be shallow-rooted and weak in the winds. Very good, Stephen. All right, my friends, I'm sorry that I have to run. This was a really special page. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow for page 21. This whole tractate, amazing, right? You wouldn't think that the laws of fast days could lead to such beautiful, uplifting spiritual teachings, but there's more to come. So with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow at the regular Friday time, noon Pacific. Thanks again, Bill, for sponsoring today's show, and to everybody who's participating in our annual campaign, donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. We're building the AT app, which is going to make it so that we don't have these glitches. We'll still always put the daily show out on Facebook and YouTube, but we're going to have a much more direct conduit, not just for the daily show, but for all our content and new kinds of content that we're planning as our platform matures. So please help us build the AT app. It's expensive to build an app. Donate. Now during the annual campaign, the donations are doubled thanks to our matchers. Again, donate.accidentaltalmudist.org, and have a great night and a Freilichen Hanukkah.